Guess Twitter's probably fired up by now. Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here tonight with Kevin McCurdy. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, David. How's it going?
Well, I can't remember a least satisfying Oilers hockey game that I've ever watched. If that was, I mean, I guess Florida fans are ecstatic tonight, right? Of course. But are any other hockey fans on earth? That was one of the worst, the least entertaining, least satisfying crap shows of a hockey game I've ever seen. And a lot of it is on the Oilers. Much of it is on the Oilers. Let's say 75%. But there were some other factors in this game too that came into play that we'll get to that took this game over the edge into something which was kind of if I wasn't grading it, and wasn't, if this wasn't part of my job to write about it, I would have turned it off. It was horrible. That was a horrible game and a horrible moment for the Oilers, and not a great moment for the NHL. After two spectacular games, that was a crap show of a game. It was awful. How are you doing?
I'm having a tough time with that game, if I'm being honest. The Oilers played extremely undisciplined, unfocused hockey, and there is nothing that I took away from that game as something positive that they could build off of. And that's a tough place to be when you're in Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals.
I don't know. I know the announcers were talking about that, Kevin, like you want to build off the third period, but I don't think it's going to work that way for the Oilers. They've got to win the next game. They know it. Mm-hmm. They've got to play more disciplined hockey. They know it. I think there'll be a few lineup changes, and we'll get to that at the end. So I'm not worried about building off anything here. The Oilers have been a really good team. They were the better team in the first two games, I think, and unlucky in the end not to win the second. They weren't a lot better, but they were the better team. This game they weren't. Florida was the better team. Florida played a really good game. But the Oilers need to go back and play their game. And their game wasn't even close to it. It was such a strange game, fractured by penalty calls mainly. And the Oilers got off on the wrong foot and they never recovered.
Oh, I'd say that's wrong foot. They got off on the wrong foot within the first 2 minutes of the game. There's just, it was not a good start to them. And I think you'll touch on that.
Let's get to it, because we're alluding to things we're going to talk about. So let's just talk about them. Two good things, two bad things, and two numbers. And because it was maybe my take is maybe one of the worst, if not the worst game in Oilers history. We'll do two bad things each, because usually we just skim over losses with one bad thing each, but I think this one merits it. Kevin, let's start out with your good thing. What's your good thing?
My good thing is that the Oilers tend to play better in games 4 to 7 of playoff series, which is good because they could use a good game rate about now. I don't have much that I took away from this game, as I said already, that's positive. It's really hard. Like, I'm trying to think through that game of just one single thing that was that there would be enough good things that both of us could take something away, and there just wasn't.
Well, I'll quickly go to my good thing, because I think there was one thing. Corey Perry's goal.
Yep.
It was exactly what the Oilers needed in that moment. They were down 2-0. Their power play hadn't been good. It had been weak in the first period. The Oilers had not been that bad aside from the score in the first period and all the penalties. Like the grade A shots were 6-4 for the Oilers. Yep. And they hadn't had a bounce, and Florida got one, and they got better goaltending as well, much better goaltending. So the Oilers are coming in they're down 2-0. They have a penalty, power play, I should say, to start the period. And it's not going well. It doesn't go well. And then Evan Bouchard and Corey Perry just make two highly composed plays, which is what you need to beat the Panthers. Highly composed skill plays. Bouchard spots Perry down low and zips him the shot pass. And instead of trying to tip it right into Bobrovsky's pads, as Kapanen did in overtime, right? In the last game, it was a tough play for Kapanen, but Perry stops it and he raises the puck over, calmly, coolly raises the puck over Bobrovsky's pads. And Bobrovsky often reads the play and is very aggressive. And sometimes you think, oh, if the Oilers had just let him Bobrovsky makes the first move, and then if you just held the puck and then made your move, you might score on him a few times. Easier said than done. It's a really difficult thing to do at that intensity of game, and with Bobrovsky being such a great goalie. But Perry did it. It was a fantastic move. Kevin, the score was 2-1, and I thought, hey, game on. This is the break they needed. Game on. This is a game now, and the Oilers could easily win this game because they often do come from behind. So I thought everything was fine up until that. Like, it kind of wiped away a rancid first period. They're back in the game.
Yep.
Here we go.
Not so much.
Not so much. Let's get on.
You might as well zip right into the bad thing, because the bad thing is right.
Well, why don't I? Yeah, let's just segue to it, because to me, the more I watch hockey, and I know, like to win the Stanley Cup, you have to be really good at. You are dealt psychological blows in a game. You are dealt bad calls by the ref. You got to kill off the penalty. You're dealt things by the opposition that upset you. You got to shake it off, and you got to stick to your game, and you got to win. This one, what happened here was one of the strangest plays I've seen in the NHL playoffs, and one of the most consequential plays, because it was such a terrible way to have a goal scored against you. The Oilers didn't ever recover. They never had anything left after that. They didn't have a grade A shot. This happened like 3 minutes into the period. They had one more grade A shot, a tip shot by Kane at the end of the period. That was it. They mustered nothing. Usually when the Oilers are down 2-1, like by 2 goals in the second period, they come on. They never got it back after this. And I think it has to do with the uniquely strange nature of what happened on this play. John Klingberg's coming around the net, and Barkov comes in, and Elliot Friedman says, oh, Barkov is the best defensive player in the world. Well, part of being the best defensive player in the world, I guess, is slashing someone and then grabbing them. So Klingberg is already being held up illegally by Barkov. The kind of small fouls probably that may or may not get called, especially in the playoffs, weren't called there. But he's about to elude Barkov. He's about past him, and he runs straight into the ref, who has planted himself on the boards. And as Klingberg is coming around the boards, he doesn't get out of the way. He doesn't back out. He doesn't back out towards the blue line. He stays put on the boards, and Klingberg runs right into him, loses the puck. That turnover quickly, within 2 seconds, is in the Oilers' net. Now, it wasn't a great play by the Oilers after that. They could have, McDavid had a chance to block a pass. Wallman screened the goalie, Skinner. The shooter, I think it was it Reinhart, made a great shot. Skinner, he didn't save anything. Some people were going to hear, well, Skinner wasn't bad. They were all great shots. You got to save 3 out of 4 great shots in the NHL to be an NHL goalie. You got to save even the 5 alarm shots. You gotta save one. You've got to save 2 out of 3. So he didn't do that, and he didn't stop this one. But the whole thing of bumping into the ref, you're just back in the game, and the ref gets in your way like that.
It wasn't the only time that happened tonight either. That was there was another one in the other corner that got kicked right out in front of the Oilers' net. Like, just get out of the way.
Kevin, so I've often talked about the psychological problem that comes from when a team gets an outside shot tipped in, like that kind of goal. It takes the life out of a team as well.
Yeah.
This was worse. I think this was worse because it was all over for the Oilers after that. And I don't think they're a psychologically fragile team. I think they're actually really on the upper end of being pretty mentally tough and being able to take a lot. But they knew this was a tough game, and being down 2 goals was really tough. So there was the fact of that they're suddenly down 2 goals after getting that goal, and then the way it happens, I think it wasn't there wasn't a lot made of it on the broadcast. It was hardly mentioned on the broadcast, but I think it was by far the key play in the game, and it changed the game completely. It wasn't the same game after that. The Oilers were done. What do you think?
I don't think I've seen them pack it in quite to that extent, and certainly not in the playoffs. It's been overall, that was an extremely frustrating game of hockey to watch. They just collapsed and they started playing Florida, and Florida dictated every element of that game. They goaded the Oilers into taking stupid penalties. I'm going to make one comment about the officiating, and that is, and to reflect what T. Sallow said in the Twitter chat here, the officiating of that game was horrendous, and that's not an Oilers specific comment. There was lots of stuff that the officials let go both ways, and that game was one of the poorest displays of NHL officiating I have seen in this playoffs, and that is certainly saying something. Like, you got to get out of the way. You got to get out of the way.
You got to get out of the way. Was there other things because they were calling? I think they were trying to crack down in the first period, calling everything, and I think they actually did a pretty even-handed job of calling everything. Did you not like that, or what didn't you like about the officiating? Because I don't
that cross-checking penalty where Kane got, where
yes.
Like that is soft as crap, man. Like that is is
true.
But the flip side of
that, at the time, are you going to call that later in the game when that happens? Because if that's
are you going to call that an OT? Like,
yeah. Why? But they were trying to, I think, send a message after horrendous missed calls, and a poorly, Don Cherry called it the worst officiated game he'd ever seen. He's been watching NHL hockey for 80 years.
Yeah.
So after that, I think they were trying to really call things. And they did call both teams. There was lots of penalties. I mean, the one that they might have missed was Arvidsson hitting the goalie.
Yep.
And then Bobrovsky going clear embellishment, just outrageous embellishment. If they had evened that up, that might have been a call that they could have got that would have, and the Oilers just kept getting penalty after penalty, and finally they scored. But
well, I mean, Leon got slashed at one point. That went uncalled. They got 2 infractions against him on the same shift, actually, that both went uncalled. And again, I don't want to sit here and harp and say that the Oilers were the victims and that Florida was the complete beneficiary here, because to me, it was a game that the officials struggled to keep under control. It was a game that they struggled to call things fairly. There was things that were unfairly called in both directions, penalties that I would consider soft, and then there was penalties that should have been penalties that were not called. And when you have all 3 of those elements, it's very hard to view the officiating in a positive light.
Yeah. I feel part of me feels sorry for Sharon, getting in the way like that. Like he's got to live with that. He had a massive. They say the refs don't want to impact the game, buddy. Wow, he had a massive impact on that game, and he should be pulled from the series because of that mistake. It was so consequential. He shouldn't be reffing another game in this series. I think they can't have that. Their refs have got to be more on the ball than to allow that kind of play to happen on the boards. So,
can we back up and talk about John Klingberg a little bit, though? Like that play in the corner, Klingberg also had a poor game, right? Like, to me, he got himself into some trouble on various occasions. He was -3. Like, he struggled tonight, and that was just one example. And that's the second time in 2 games that he's been, roasted, getting run into a corner, right? So that, to me,
he did get slashed and grabbed.
Yeah,
and
that's fair
by the ref on that particular. Like, I'm not disagreeing with you, only on that play. overall, Kevin, and then he fell down right at the end and caused a breakaway. Like it was probably his worst game of the playoffs. It wasn't,
Yeah,
and he's been trending down a bit lately. Actually,
yeah.
the last 4 or 5 games, he's not been playing as well. So, but I agree with you on that play. I don't blame him, but on the
Just
generally
overall,
speaking, I agree.
just overall vibes, right? Like that's
Fair
kind of
enough.
where I'm at.
Fair enough. Lots of people will be agreeing with you, nodding their head, and I agree with you too. Overall, I gave him. I mean, I gave lots of threes tonight on the game grades, but he was one of them. I don't think I gave any twos because I didn't think anyone particularly stood out as being particularly worse than the others. But there was probably 10 threes, including to Draisaitl, McDavid, and Nurse, and a lot of the big players on the team. Okay, your first bad thing.
I just discipline in general. This team needs to get its crap together. They cannot play Florida Panthers hockey. They are going to get beaten with experience every single time that they try to. The Oilers need to dictate the terms of this engagement with Florida. They need to dictate the terms of the game, and they need to not get drawn into frankly Kachuk and Bennett's bullshit, because they're going to lose that style of hockey. It's not a team that's built to be that kind of combative, greasy team, and it shows because they ended up in the penalty box a lot tonight. So overall discipline, we expect a more mature team. They say that they've increased their maturity level that they learned from last year. And here we are getting spanked 6-1 because they couldn't stay out of this penalty box and they couldn't keep cooler heads about them and dictate the terms of their engagement.
Good comment. Fair enough. Like, I agree with you. I think the two hits, Ekblad's hit on McDavid, and which was, I thought, a great hit, a perfectly legal hit, and a great hit by Aaron Ekblad on Connor McDavid. But the hit from Sam Bennett on Vasily Podkolzin, which precipitated the fourth goal because Podkolzin was so stunned after that, he just gave the puck away at his own blue line, at the offensive blue line, I should say.
Yeah.
But that hit was knee on knee. There was knee on knee there. Now, it wasn't the initial point of contact, but it was the simultaneous point of contact, I think. And shoulder into the body, knee on knee. It was a brutal, absolutely brutal, vicious hit by Sam Bennett. And I think after that, the Oilers just saw red. They had lost. They had no life for the game for coming back, and they knew it. So they just wanted to injure someone. And that's what Trent Frederick tried to do. He actually he cross-checked Bennett 3 times in the back. Once broke his stick over his back, and that started off some fights. He just wanted to injure Sam Bennett. And I get that. After what Sam Bennett did to Podkolzin, you're standing up for your teammate. That's part of hockey. Like, if the Oilers hadn't had that kind of response, Kevin, half the fan base would be saying, where's the Oilers fight? Why don't they stand up for McDavid and Bennett on those big hits? They got to go after these guys. Yeah. So there is that aspect of hockey as well. So part of it was losing composure, but part of it is standing up for your teammate and trying to get an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, which is also important in playoff hockey. So I'm not as, I agree with your comment though. They can't play Florida's game. They've got to play their own game, and they've got to get back to their own game. They played their own game really well in Edmonton. For most of those games, the Oilers played their game, and it was played on their terms.
No, there's not much to like. That's just like when you give into Florida's style of play, they're just going to beat you with experience, right? They've been doing it for a long time, and there's a lot of greasy players on that team that are really good at what they do. Like, it's not an indictment of Florida so much as it's just they're two different styles of team, and if we succumb to playing their version of the game, it's going to be rough.
Yeah, that gets me to my second bad thing in the game. When you get down to Florida, they're able then to tighten the screws a bit, and the Oilers got down in the first minute, and I just hated the goal against.
Mm-hmm.
It's off a face-off. in the defensive zone that goes back to the corner. And there's a couple things that go wrong. Like Leon Draisaitl gets blocked from his man by a hard legal pick by the Florida player, which was a really good play. Draisaitl just lost that battle. Someone needed to take the guy going behind the net, Lundell. I think it was Lundell. Someone needed to get on him, and Leon couldn't because he was blocked off from that. And Nurse is at the side of the net, and he just freezes at the side of the net. He had Klingberg covering the guy in the slot. He just didn't make the right read was to go for the puck carrier and get after him, plaster him into the boards. There was time to do it, and Darnell just froze. And the guy throws the puck. I think it's Lundell again, throws the puck into the slot. I think it bounces off an Oiler and eventually goes to Marchand in this mad scramble that ensues after that, and it's in the net. Stu Skinner's flailing around. He doesn't look good on the goal.
Kapanen's facing the wrong direction.
Kapanen, it's a crazy play. These things happen. But it wasn't crazy initially until you gave Lundell this clear path, this time and space to make a play, and he got lucky. There was, he probably should have come out the other side to make the play, is the truth. But I just feel like another example of Darnell not reading the game correctly, which he struggles to do under pressure in the playoffs, is the fact of the matter. This regular season, Darnell Nurse was a really good player. He got it done. He was playing the best hockey of his career. He might have had his best year as a two-way player this season. But in the playoffs, we've seen a regression in big moments. And I just felt like, what was he doing there? Maybe I
don't know. I think there's a really high chance that you see Stetcher come in next game. It's clearly that Klingberg is a bit gassed and is getting run around a bit by Florida. And I think that common sense style of play that Stetcher brings really helps settle Nurse. And I think that they are desperate to settle Nurse at this point, because another game like this and they're in serious, season-ending cup losing trouble. The other thing, I have one more comment about the first goal, and that's just generally the goaltending tonight. I know I'm a stalwart Stuart Skinner defender. I think he gets entirely too much flack as the last person to make a mistake when a goal goes in the net, right? I think though that the Oilers fan base as a whole has a propensity to pick on our goalies first and foremost. But in the same breath, I'm not ignorant. You need more from your goalie when you're at minus 2.6 goals saved above expected. That is not going to win you a game in the Stanley Cup Finals. So there's a double-edged sword here where I'll defend Skinner against the unreasonable, but still ask him to, really deliver the goods when it matters. And
that's the best we can do.
It's nuance, right? Like that's the thing about hockey.
Commentators and try to be fair.
Yep.
And fair and accurate, right? That's the whole idea. And not pick on players. And, I was really happy to see actually Klingberg and Nurse play together in the playoffs. They'd played together 60 minutes up until then, and they had 5 goals for, none against. Now their shot metrics weren't good, but their goal metrics were excellent. So I thought they made the right call. I would have preferred, I think, Nurse and Wallman, but I think Nurse and Klingberg was second best.
Yeah.
And they just didn't get it done on that first goal against. They were the primary guys, along with Skinner, I guess, and Draisaitl. And it was a bad scene. They're down 1-0 a minute in Florida.
Yep.
What's your second bad thing, Kevin?
My second bad thing is just again going back to playing the Panthers game. I like that game, the second half of that game in particular, but the last 2 periods especially. Every little interaction they were trying to stir it up. And again, to your point, I get that they want to, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but my history in watching the Oilers is they're not really that style of team. So to watch them try and be that team, and end up in the box over and over and over again and never off the penalty kill for huge swat. Like, you're never going to win a hockey game playing like that. And, favorable outcomes and whatever other officiating stuff aside, the Oilers just played undisciplined hockey in a style that has nothing to do with how the Oilers win hockey games.
Yeah. And Florida was great.
Yep.
Florida played their game to perfection. They really had a great game, and they sniped their chances. They made the best of their chances. They made good shots on their chances.
Yep.
Like I talked about how Corey Perry, how he scored his goal. The Florida goals were scored with the same amount of cool composure and offensive confidence. They've got some shooters there in Verhaeghe and Reinhart that are deadly, and Sam Bennett. He's a hell of a hockey player. Like I wanted to see the Oilers get Sam Bennett in that game, but I recognize like he is a killer in these playoffs. He is doing great. He is unnerving the other team, and he is making big plays on the attack. He's playing like Mark Messier, frankly. And man, I don't know what they're going to do against him. They've got to just keep going at it. They got to battle that guy and beat him on the scoreboard, because they're not going to beat him physically. But
no, especially when he takes an opportunity where the ref is pinning somebody down. And granted, Frederick started that engagement. When the ref's holding a guy down and he's wailing on Frederick's head, that's some low tier trash hockey that has no business being in the sport. And it's something I take serious. Like, if if the roles were reversed and Frederick was punching Bennett in the head while the ref is holding him down, I would expect him to get suspended for that. It's garbage hockey, and it's really dangerous, and frankly, it's pretty close to league sanctioned abuse, because you need to either if you as a ref cannot control both players, then you need to get out of the way and let them duke it out.
That wasn't their strong suit tonight, was it? Getting out of the way.
Sure wasn't.
What's your number?
There were 35 separate infractions called tonight on this game. So not, in 60 minutes of hockey, 35 different infractions.
Yeah.
So a bit of a ref show, a little bit just tough to play any sort of real hockey with that kind of whistleblowing going on. And, a lot of it was completely legitimate. There was a lot of penalties that were absolutely penalties. I'm not going to sit here and debate the rule book. There's a lot of people that belonged in the box, but it just shows you the overall ebbs and flows of the game and just how little flow there was to that game, especially from the Oilers' perspective. I think it was like something to the tune of 21-14 in favor of the Panthers. And granted, a lot of that was in the third period, but it just was not a particularly fluid game, I guess.
It was horrible.
Sure was.
Okay, it was horrible. All right, my number is 1. Big things are expected from Leon Draisaitl. He seems healthy enough, and he had an MVP-like season this year. Might even be the MVP. Might win the Hart Trophy for the regular season. He was taken out of that game. He was not a factor.
He got tilted.
You think they got under his skin, and you are correct.
I think he had all the body language and tone and whatever else. He was doing stupid stuff, and he was trying to, grind with the greasiest of them, and that doesn't usually end well for, like, pissy Leon is usually pretty effective, but this was beyond that. He was visibly tilted on the ice, and that never works out in his favor.
Yeah. The two best chances on the early power plays for the Oilers came to Nuge, and he missed the net on one, and the other one he missed the puck. It was a scramble play, which was tougher, right? Like so it's not like Leon had these moments but he got nothing done. He got nothing done that game. And except, he was a culprit on the first goal against. Tough play, tough physical play. That's frustrating
Yep.
to get blocked out of the play like that. But he was, man, that was one of the poorest games I've seen him play. And
-2
yeah,
and
he's got it.
33% on the face-off dot. And neither of those things tell you anything good about Leon's game tonight.
Yeah. So I guess, I think both of us had an instinct. We just want to get this podcast over with and not belabor it. And there's the old saying from McTavish, like, just chuck it in the garbage can, or like that, forget about it. And I think that's a psychologically healthy response. There's not much to be learned from it other than you keep your calm, carry on, and don't give them that early lead if you can help it. But there will be some changes, I think, in the Oilers lineup for the next game. Maybe things that they've been wanting to do, but when you're in games or really super close, you don't want to mess with success, which I also understand. They did change their D-man pairings. I thought they actually did a really good job doing that. It was hard to tell because there was so little even strength play, and the game was, by then it was 3-1 and kind of over because of the play I talked about earlier. So I like the D-man pairings, but what do you think, Kevin, might happen? Like, let's go back and forth. You pick one thing, then I'll pick another. Go ahead. What's your first move you think the Oilers will make?
I think you'd pull Klingberg out of the lineup and you look at putting Stetcher in there just for no other reason than to juice Nurse. Like, for whatever reason, he has the keys to Darnell Nurse, and those guys, when they're put together, they just play smart, calm hockey, and and Stetcher's a little warrior, right? Like, that guy has the biggest heart, or one of the biggest hearts on the team, like, just absolutely unfazed by anything. He may be one of the shortest guys, but he's one of the most fierce as well.
I really like John Klingberg, and I think he's played good hockey, great hockey in some games, but he has been trending down actually since about Ekholm came back. I think he's getting worn down a bit physically, and he's been leaking more grade A shots against. Stetcher, I think, works with Nurse because he's exceptional at one thing. It's the kind of play where Klingberg ran into the ref. Going back and retrieving the puck, Stetcher's exceptional at going back, getting it, and moving it fast. And
makes a good
he
first
tends
pass.
not to go through Nurse. I thought Klingberg would work with Nurse for the same reason. He's really good at retrievals and moving the puck. But Stetcher is super fast, and he's whereas Nurse is kind of a swooping player, swoops around the ice in big circles. Same with Kulak. That's why they don't work together. Stetcher is a point-to-point player. Stop and start. All hustle. He just hustles from point to point to point. He must play that way or he can't survive in the NHL. He's too small. And I think that kind of sound fundamental play, point to point, quick retrievals, quick puck movement is what Nurse needs for a partner. He played, and when he had Stetcher as his partner, Darnell Nurse played really well. He played good games, maybe even a few great games, where he was suddenly a lot more confident and more physical as well. It was interesting. His physical game came out, and Stetcher's always there to back him up because Stetcher's always in position. And so I would like to see that as well. I think that would be a heck of a good idea, and I think that we will see it. My suggestion is, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, what else you got? Now it's your turn. What do you?
They're going to have an interesting call. I think Trent Frederick. We've heard the same thing about him for about 3 playoff rounds. People keep saying, "Oh, he's getting better now." It's what you say when a player actually isn't getting any better. He is unable. I think because of his injury, we're not seeing anywhere close to what Trent Frederick is as a player. He has been okay in the last few games defensively, but generally speaking, he's been one of the weakest defensive forwards, and he creates almost nothing on the attack. And his physical play hasn't been that noticeable. He did take the law into his own hands and try to injure Sam Bennett with a vicious cross-check to the back. That shouldn't be enough to keep him in the game for the Oilers. As you say, that really isn't the Oilers game, and they have Jeff Skinner. It will be it would be a signal that we're going to play we're going to play Oilers hockey by putting in a skill player for a physical player. And I think all of the Oilers players are tough enough and strong enough to stand up for himself and shake off the BS from Florida, shake it off and stick to skill. And that needs to be their mantra going into the next game. Shake off their stuff and let's do our stuff. Let's focus on our stuff. And our stuff is making plays, puck possession, and scoring goals. Jeff Skinner, I think, if he had been on the power play instead of Nuge, whatever's ailing Nuge, I do not know. I think he might have scored that goal on the rebound that Nuge didn't. I think Skinner would have put that puck in the net. And I wonder if Nuge's injury, they took him off the power play, actually, on the power play that Perry scored, although he was on the ice, I think, when that happened. But I think that it might be a move to put Skinner on the top power play as well. And have Nuge, if he's ailing or sick or whatever it is, injured, just a slightly lesser role, not counted on the power play, and get another shooter, another sniper out there to help McDavid. Give him another option than always having to look for Draisaitl, but someone who he can find and can really snap that puck in the net. Like a Verhaeghe.
Change the look. Yeah. That's all you got to do is change the look. The Oilers power play is running 12.5% on the road. Like, that's not going to get it done.
They put Wallman there, and that really didn't work. They don't need another defenseman. Bouchard's enough of a threat to make that an issue. I think Jeff Skinner and I think Frederick out. What is that? Would you do that?
That's pretty much it. And I would probably cuff Vander Kane upside the head and say, stop taking stupid penalties. That's probably the other thing that I would do, because he took a lot of fouls tonight. You know, you need a Vander to play a greasy game, but you can't take 16 minutes of penalties in a night, right? Like, it's just, you know, the end, sure, fine, whatever. The 2 and 10 to get rid of him, that's just table stakes. But like the cross check was weak sauce, but the other one was going to be a penalty 10 times out of 10. And after you've taken one, you cannot take a second one. That's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, they might need to shake up their lines as well. I wouldn't be. McDavid had different line mates, wouldn't bother me. I think for instance, Arvidsson and Skinner might be good line mates for McDavid.
Man, that Hyman loss is just a killer. It's just a killer right now, because if you could run Hyman and Skinner with McDavid and put Nuge down on the third line and shove, you know, downward pressure Rico down to the fourth line, like, the center lineup makes a whole lot more sense when it's McDavid, Draisaitl, Nuge, and Rico than it does with Janmark as 4C.
It does. Obviously, the loss of Hyman, he was their best winger by far. It wasn't even close. And it's massive. It's also hockey. Like, if they're going to win the cup, you've got to be able to sustain something like that and continue on and keep going and figure it out. So it's a really interesting time for Knobloch about how many moves he's going to make. And we haven't talked about the biggest possible move, which would be Pickard over Skinner. Would you do that?
I would probably think about it. I didn't love Pickard's play on the 6th goal. I don't think that was a strong play from a goaltender's point of view, but Skinner is once again struggling, and we cannot afford any more struggling. Like, this is crunch time. And now the flip side of that argument is Skinner's game 4-7, he becomes a monster. Not just a pretty good goalie. Game 4-7 Skinner is scary good. So that's a tough decision to make, and one that Schwartz is going to have to weigh in on and give the best advice on how do they proceed out of this.
I think I'm back and forth on it in my own head, because you think of that boost that Pickard's given the team in the past, right? But on the other hand, maybe this is the time to show confidence in Skinner, who has played really well, who outplayed Ottinger, who was strong in the first couple games. He didn't have a good night tonight, but man, the whole team didn't have a good night, and those were wicked shots that beat him. So maybe this is the moment. Like they have is there 2 days between the games here? Is the game?
I think so, yeah.
So there's lots of time here for Skinner to get it together and think about it. Is there enough time? Yeah, he's such a streaky player, right? When he starts going down, you worry about it, right? Because then he gets on that down streak. So I'll have to think about that one, Kevin. I have real mixed feelings. I I don't know what they should do.
My only guiding feedback to that would be if there's some known injury to Skinner, then I would definitely pay Pickard. I know that Bennett landed on Skinner pretty hard there in the previous game, and if he's nursing some kind of injury, then I would probably play Pickard. But if there's no injury there, Skinner generally responds strongly to being pulled. And game 4 to Kevin Skinner is pretty formidable, so that's probably what I would use to guide my decision on that. But oh man, were there a lot of more issues out there tonight than just Stuart Skinner.
There were. Well, so what do you think we've said what we want them would do, except we're not decided on Skinner, Pickard. We can't even, we need more time to process that. And I would actually be good with either of them. I can see either of them going in and the rationale for it works for me. I'm not going to, it's Pickard's one and Skinner's one. So I have confidence as much, like I don't have a, bounding confidence in either one, but I've got about the same amount and I'm good with either of them. I think both can come up with big games. It might be in terms of if you really do feel like you need a psychological boost, that this game was such a downer that you need to really shake things up, putting Pickard in could do that. So I think that would be the main advantage of doing that. But if you think that the main thing you need to do is kind of, let's do our thing. Let's play our game. Let's stick to our game. Let's stick to what we do well. We forgot to do that. Let's start doing that again. Then the message is we stick with Skinner because he's been the guy. So it depends what the coach thinks his team needs in terms of that, I think, because you just don't know which one's going to be the better goalie, really.
Well, I do think that Pickard might struggle a little bit more against Florida's offense style too. So I think that might weigh into it. But I don't think goaltending's important, but I don't think that's the bigger picture of what needs to change before next game. The Oilers need to do a little bit of soul searching. They need to reset their mental state. They need to focus. They need to play clean, good hockey for 60 minutes. Florida's a beatable team, assuming we can keep it on our terms.
I agree. All right. With that agreement, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to add or wrap it up?
I think we've kicked this one a little bit.
All righty. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for talking tonight.
Yep, no worries.
And in the meantime, and in between time, and until we meet again, Bruce McCurdy, now in the Hall of Our Fathers, having a cool one with the Hockey Gourds. We could use their help, Bruce. This has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.
Thanks for listening, everyone.